Hello, everybody. Welcome to an Admitted Student Parent Session. We are so excited to be hosting you today. We hope you enjoyed your long weekend. It was definitely nice to be able to have a little bit of a break, and now we're very excited to be back for our last parent session. Before we get started with Denise, which she's here, which is awesome. So nice to see a friend on Zoom here. If you can make sure that your first and last name is shown on your kind of like username, just to ensure that if there are any questions that we're not able to get to today, we want to ensure that we're able to follow up with the correct person. And then if you have any questions throughout the session or afterwards, feel free to add it in the chat. If you hover at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to kind of see a little bubble that says chat, and then if you click on that, you can drop in your question there. You can have it so everyone can see the question, or you can also send it to me directly in private message if you kind of feel uncomfortable for everybody to see, and I'll make sure to read those questions out loud anonymously. But we just want to make sure that everything gets answered today, and we're super excited. Before we go any forward, I think we're actually ready to get started. Denise, hello.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to orientation. Let me see, can you see my screen share, Gina?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, thank you so much. All right, so let's just get started. So my name is Denise Giespers, and I'm the Director for Orientation, Transfer Student Services, Greek Life, and I co-coordinate Veteran Services. And my counterpart over here on the right-hand side of your screen is Sparkles. Sparkles is my animal, and she goes with me to the office every day and is having a difficult time right now social distancing from the office because she's pretty sure that your student is not at Pacific to go to class, but to come and visit her. If you'll hold on just one moment, somebody outside my window started sawing. I'm going to go shut my window just one moment.
All right, thanks, Denise. This is the great thing about working from home. We've got lawnmowers going off in the background. So we'll get started here.
It never fails. As soon as I get on a call, somebody starts doing something amazing to their backyard.
Always.
Okay, let's see here. So I am joined by an amazing staff of people, and I actually have at least one member of my staff who is on right now. Julio, if you would introduce yourself, and then I'll talk a little bit more about our orientation staff.
Of course, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Julio Montelongo. I am a recent graduate of Pacific University. And as Denise had just mentioned, I am one of the co-coordinators for 2020-2021 fall orientation. So I'm here to make sure to help to make sure your orientation is going to be spot on.
Thanks, Julio. So I get the privilege of working with a number of our students who help coordinate all of the different aspects of orientation. This year, I also have the privilege of having a couple of our professional staff members who are helping us out as well, because there's a lot of transition and changes happening, and it's been wonderful to have them join us as we progress through all of the different things that are going on. And last year, this was our picture of our orientation staff. We were actually discussing last week that we maybe need to do a Zoom and do a Brady Bunch style photo as our official orientation picture this year. So we're going to talk a little bit about the structure of orientation and what your student and you can kind of expect. This is a little bit of it was going to be a different this year, just given the circumstances that we're under, but there are still some key components that we are going to continue. So one of those key components is our Boxer ambassadors. These individuals are students that are returning their sophomore, junior, senior year that give back to the incoming class, and they help your student walk through the transition from orientation, and oftentimes throughout that first semester, there are actually many of them have become lifelong friends with those members who are in what we call pod groups. I inherited that when I took over orientation, and it just has never changed. So your student will get added to a pod group, and then they will have an ambassador who helps walk them through that and connect them to the institution. So structure of orientation in general, what should you expect? So in late June, we will send out some welcome information on behalf of orientation. We have an online newsletter, And then you'll start to really hear from us, and you'll start to hear less from admissions, but more from orientation. In July, we will introduce your student to their ambassador. And then in August, you'll start to hear a lot more information about the logistical information about arriving to campus and what to expect. As of right now, our orientation dates are the 27th through the 30th. And if your student is to be there for an early arrival, such as voyages or athletics, we will be sending that information out as it comes in. There's still some shifting that is going on due to our situation, but we will also do some mini family orientations on those days. You're not required to come to any of them, or you can come to multiples of those, but we will be sending out that information. Something that is new, and this was just decided last week, so you are the first group to be hearing this. We will be doing a lot more information online than we have ever done in the past. And how that's going to look will be very different. And we're still working through those specifics. So please, as soon as we know, you will know. That is my promise and commitment to all of you. So what do we do at orientation? Our job is really to connect you and your student to the resources and help them be successful as they transition to Pacific. We also really want them to build relationships with their fellow peers of incoming students and the returning students, the Boxer community as a whole, and you as family members are also part of that Boxer community. We also really value our Boxer traditions. I was actually conversing with our coordinators last week about what are those different parts and components that we can do even in the wake of the pandemic and social distancing, of all of those traditions that we've done in the past, so that everybody still feels like they're a major part of the Boxer community from day one. All right, so I'm gonna go through a few other things that you might wanna consider talking to your student about before they even arrive. Many of these will seem like common sense information, but sometimes it's hard to remember to prep yourself to have these conversations before your student gets to the university. And I'm also going to preface this with, these are ones that I asked current students what they wish they would have known prior to coming to campus for orientation. So I hope a few of you are chuckling right now about my visual, because we all know if this is to happen, you may come up with a few pink items. So how to prepare your student. What are your expectations on communications, on budgeting, on money? These are really important conversations to have with your student right before or during the summer months as they get ready to come. Orientation and move-in tends to be really fast, and you start to think about all these different components and you're like, I wish we'd have talked about this, we'll talk about it later. But also have the conversation about realistic expectations. So I have a college student at Pacific right now as well. And you know, we communicate a lot, but it's important for us to remember that they may not be able to respond as quickly as we have had them respond in the past, or we expect them to, because they're busy and they're on a different schedule. And that takes a little bit of time to get used to. They need to really learn how to speak for themselves and what they need. That can be very uncomfortable for many students. Our faculty really want them to communicate. I've heard this a number of times. I didn't go to office hours. I'm like, why didn't you go to office hours? I'm pretty sure my faculty don't want me to come. No, they want to hear from you. Please, please speak up. We need to hear from you. We want to help you, assist you. Knowing when to ask for help, physically, mentally, emotionally, that's also sometimes very difficult to do. So really have those conversations. The next is a big topic that oftentimes happens is like, do they really need this? And yes, they really do need these documents. Social Security card, birth certificate, health insurance card, passport. Many of your students will have the opportunity to have work study or work within the general community of Forest Grove, Hillsborough, wherever that is. And oftentimes what holds us up from getting them started right away is the documentation. It also has to be the official document. It cannot be a picture of it. So a couple of suggestions that others have had is, if you're nervous about sending these documents with your student, get them a little lockbox that they can put them in, or create a file folder. I'm going to talk a bit about that after this next slide, but it is something that they are going to need. Life skills. We already talked already a little bit about laundry. Teaching them how to do their laundry is an important skill to have. The next one, how to make a doctor's appointment. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with my oldest son, and I told him, I'm like, okay, you get to make your doctor's appointment today. And he looked at me like with deer in the headlights, like, what? And so I got to role model that with him, sitting there right beside him as he made that first doctor's appointment and how that worked. So have those conversations with your student on that. They also need to know how their insurance will work and establishing at a doctor's office if they need to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with the health insurance, because that's a question that always comes up. So check with your health insurance about their coverage when they come to Pacific, what plan they have, if it works in the area. Your student will have the opportunity to waive the university's health insurance if you have health insurance already. And that information will come out from our business office towards, it's in July typically that happens, and then they'll need to either waive that or not waive that in August. Just a little update, that also has to be done every year. So if you're kind of keeping a checklist of things that would need to be done every year, such as the FAFSA, the health insurance is one of those. The other part that is important to note about Pacific is we do have a counseling and health clinic on campus that your student can utilize regardless of what health insurance they have, whether it's your private insurance or whether it's the university insurance. And that's also one of those things that students get confused about. So I just want to remind you that we do have those services on campus. They pay a health fee to use them. And we don't want students sitting in their residence hall room, not feeling well and not getting some attention to that because they're just not sure where to go. So they can make an appointment online or over the phone. And it's a really great piece of connection that we have on campus, because we don't want them sick and miserable. That's no good for anybody. Banking, direct deposit, or creating an account at a bank nearby, so you can find out if there is a location of a bank that you currently have, or if you want to search out other options here in the Forest Grove area. Creating and following a budget. That's always been a big one because many of our students haven't had to really think about that much yet. And those are one of those things that students oftentimes tell me they wish they'd had more knowledge about. How to write checks, how to mail letters, obviously how to budget, again, is on here. These came direct from some of my students. Cooking, like how do I bake a potato? Do I wash it first? What do I do? One of my biology students says, sponges, don't let them sit in the sink, wash them, then dry them in between uses. She had just come from a class that was discussing sponges and all the different components of testing those for the different things that are on them. Some things about their apartments, like your heater's not necessarily broke. Did you check to see that the thermometer was on cool or heat, or make sure it's on? Those are just some things that many of our students just haven't really thought about. So this is a great opportunity to do that. Social media. Have a conversation about what they're posting now can have an effect on their jobs later on, but also just in general, what they're putting out there can make a difference. And that's just something we want to remind people of. One of my former students told me that her stepmom helped her create a binder that had all of these different phone numbers for doctor's offices, account numbers, passwords, everything that they thought was useful to have in one place to be able to go back and look on. This student says 5 years after graduation, she still updates that book and keeps it so that she has a record. And it's been one of those iconic pieces that she went to college with and continues to use. So I'd recommend come up with a system that works for you and your student. All right, I'm going to tell you a little story about my journey to Pacific. And I guess I should have told you, which I didn't, that I am also an alum of Pacific, very proud alumni. And actually, as of today, this is my 21st year at Pacific as professional staff. Very cool that I'm getting to share this with you on the day that I actually started as a professional staff member at Pacific. But up here on the top left-hand side is it's actually a, what is it? Doesn't matter. I have this created on my senior class trip, and this is actually before I thought we were the boxer dogs, not our boxer. But it was just an iconic piece as I got ready to go to Pacific. I was going to put it on my door. I actually had made the decision to go somewhere else prior to really becoming involved with the Pacific community. Had my classes somewhere else and everything, but within 10 minutes of really visiting with my admissions counselor and being a part of the community, I knew Pacific is where I needed to be. It was about that connection piece. So throughout my first year at Pacific, you know, there's a couple of iconic pieces that happened. We were in the newspaper because one of my classes painted on the wall of one of our local businesses. My German professor wrote this card to me. There was a intro class that I wrote a paper on, and I found all of these documents a couple weeks ago, actually on the day of Pacific's graduation this year. And I thought, how interesting was it that I was going to be giving these presentations to incoming families and their students, and I had just recently found these documents. And the one right there in the middle actually means so much to me, because this was a letter that one of my roommates, he lived across the hall from me my first year on campus, about I was getting ready to have a little minor procedure, and he just wanted to know that he was there for me and that he was thinking of me. And you know, it's just about being a part of that boxer community of caring about each other and for each other. So I was a voice major at Pacific, and these were some of the flyers for my junior and senior recital and some of the documents that I kept as a student that really were super important throughout my time as I continued on in my academic career. And then I graduated, and I happened to find my graduation announcement as well, which was such a cool piece that I kept. I'm so glad that I did. But the other part was the connections that I made as a boxer. So down below are some photos of people I met my very first days on campus when I moved into my residence halls. And these were taken in like 24 years ago. And the pictures specifically were at our 10-year class reunion. We're just getting ready to celebrate our 20-year. We still connect, we still talk to each other. We actually did a Zoom call not long ago just to check in to see how everybody was doing. But really, it was those first few days at Pacific and becoming involved as a boxer and part of the community. So, you know, I'm showing you my family. So the top picture up there are of my parents. They're the ones that helped me get to Pacific. My parents helped me move in my first, you know, time. My dad actually, he says, do you know there are 36 steps from the bottom of this building to the top of your room? I hope you make a lot of friends, because I'm not sure I'm coming back to help you move out again. But you know, they were really important pieces of me getting to Pacific and supporting me during my time frame that I was there. The bottom left picture is of my youngest son, who has helped with orientation for the last 2 years. This was taken at orientation last year. And then I actually was able to be the family and support system as my son, Hunter, who's on the right-hand side, joined the boxer family at orientation last year. And so I remember, even though I've worked at Pacific for 21 years, I also had a lot of questions that I couldn't answer, but I knew who to go to ask those questions. Orientation answered some of those. Admissions answered some of those. It was just reaching out and being a part of that overall community. So that's my biggest takeaway from today is, if you're not sure, you have a question, please ask. All of us want to help you and your student as you get ready to transition. But community is super important. The community of friendships and family that you will make as part of the boxer community, but also the support that you get from your family as you move forward. So that was a lot of information very quickly, because I really want to answer your questions. And I know that there's going to be a lot of them. Nothing is off limits. I know that Gina and I had this conversation last week that, wow, there were some tough questions. And I'm like, yep, and I expect those. That's why I'm involved with orientation. That's just what I do. I answer those hard questions. So
yes, and you're able to do it so well too.
Well, thank you.
So we did get one question, and it did touch a little bit on the health insurance.
Okay.
most insurance carriers cover Pacific Health Center visits?
Okay, so let me be very clear. Health center visits are separate from your health insurance. They have a student fee that they pay as part of being a student at Pacific. All students pay this, and that goes to maintaining them having visits with the health center on campus. Okay, if there are additional testing or they need to be referred out, that's when your health insurance or the university's health insurance that they can purchase comes into play. Another question that we oftentimes get is, my student had surgery not too long ago. They need to continue their physical therapy. They do need to search somebody out in the general Forest Grove, Hillsborough area to do that. That's not something we provide. Athletics is a little bit different. They do have some additional pieces that they provide once they're here for those students participating in athletics. But overall, your student doesn't need to find a healthcare professional in the general community unless they have a specific situation that they're continuing to work on before they got here.
Perfect. Got a few more questions coming in. The next one is, when will students receive information on and confirmation on housing?
So Gina, you may be able to give the specific dates because I know that we already had housing, but I believe they will get confirmation on July 15th, right? Okay, I remember. Yay!
You remember things too. This is great.
So they will continue to get information, but their official confirmation of who their roommate and which place that they are actually going to be located will be June 15th.
Perfect. Yeah, so they should get like roommate information, and I think they might get roommate information a little bit before, so they have some time to reach out to some of their kind of few selected people to see who they want to room with. They do have an option to choose their roommate, so they'll probably get that confirmation in their Pacific email, their housing towards the end of May, and then July 15th is when they will get their dorm assignments and all of that information. So thank you for that. What is the reason for having the student bring their social security card and birth certificate? It's a lot of important documentation, and I know it's a little bit uneasy to have that sent with your student into college.
Yes, so the primary reason is when your student is paid either through the university or if they have a job off campus, they have to fill out the W-2 forms, and they have to have original documents, social security card, driver's license, passport takes the place of some of those documents if they have a passport, but they have to be original documents. And oftentimes students bring copies or they have them texted. And because I'm one of those people that hire students and can do those verifications, I'm like, I'm really sorry, I would love to take this, but I am required by law to see the official documents. And so I would highly recommend just going ahead and sending them with your student, because otherwise that's what we're waiting on for them to be able to start their positions. And many of them are able to start within the first week or so of class. And it's always so frustrating for your student to have to wait when they're ready to go and get involved.
Exactly. And this is, I think I can answer this, is where the deposit lottery winners already notified and awarded. The first round of our sweepstakes was announced, and they have been notified and awarded. We do have a second round that does include free housing for another semester, as well as some sweatshirts, which I know a lot of the students are very excited about. And that deposit deadline is June 1st. You can still deposit afterwards, but if you want to be in the sweepstakes for that free housing for a semester or the sweatshirt, then we will have that June 1st is the deadline, and then we'll probably announce it later that week, which is the end of next week. I want to say around June 5th or so. So the second one is still open. Can you talk about how the students are transported to their doctor's appointments or health needs? What are some of the resources that we have?
Sure. So there are a couple of resources in the community and at Pacific that your student can utilize. So if they do not bring a car to Pacific, which they are not required to and they don't need to, there are options. They can if they so choose to. We have what's called Zipcar. Zipcar is where they can rent the car. It includes the insurance. They can go, they can rent it for up to 24 hours at a time. They pick up the keys, they go take the car, do whatever they need to do, and they can come back and then turn it back in. I think we have two for sure. We might have a third one on campus. We also have TriMet, which is our local bus and MAX system of that they can utilize as well. It's fairly simple to utilize. The bus actually picks up just right off campus and can take them either to the right off of the area where that they need to go, or they can hop on our MAX system, which is our light rail type system. And they can also do a trip planner online. I'll put that in the chat in a few minutes of how they can look up. They basically put in where they're starting from, where they need to go to, and it'll tell them exactly how to do it, and oftentimes gives them more than one option. So those are the two main pieces. And a lot of students make friends with somebody who has a vehicle that is willing to go and take them as well. So it just kind of depends on your student, what their need is, what your need is as a family to provide different components of that. But those are the top three ways of your student being able to get to those different areas.
And the follow-up question to that is, can they have a private vehicle freshman year? And do they have to pay fees to park on campus?
Sure. Your student can bring a vehicle to campus. The fee is $50. That is for, this is a little complicated, but I'll just tell you what it is. The first semester they come, their fee is for a year and a half, okay? And then it switches to calendar year. We do that partially so that we don't have so many people trying to renew their parking permits at one time. And that way we can get new students that are bringing their vehicles in into the system very quickly. And since when they're a senior, even though it's academic year, they already got that other half a year when they first got their parking permit. So $50 for the calendar year. They're not guaranteed a spot on campus, but as long as they're not trying to park right next to their residence hall, there is definitely parking for overnight parking for our residential students available.
Yes, I think that's kind of the biggest, I guess, gripe that a lot of students have is that there's no parking. And no, there's parking. It's just a little bit further from where you might want it to be. So the next question is, it's more a financial aid question.
Okay.
I'll be able to answer this if you can't. When will I get a financial aid breakdown of our tuition payments? And are there any out-of-state fees? Essentially, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. There are no out-of-state fees. We're a private institution, not a state institution, so we don't have in-state or out-of-state. I know that financial aid is currently working on all of those different financial aid packets and looking to see, and I believe by June 1st that they should have at least your initial package. They may be still asking for verification if you get called for verification. If you get called for federal financial aid verification, it is important to get those documents into your financial aid counselor as quickly as possible, because that can hold up your student, and we wouldn't want that to happen. It's very random who gets called and who doesn't get called. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's very bizarre. Yeah. I had a student a couple years ago who, up until their senior year, never got called for verification, and then they were like, why do I have to do this? And like, we don't know. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. But sometimes it's just get those documents in very quickly, so then it can all be formalized and taken care of.
Yeah.
Was I right on June 1st?
Yes. It depends on when your student was admitted and when the FAFSA application was filled out. Check in with your admissions counselor, because we can actually check in to see where exactly you are. It might be that we're missing your social security number, and so we haven't been able to move forward with it, or financial aid is working on it right now, and you'll be hearing back soon. So best rule of thumb is to reach out to your admissions counselor and say, hey, where's my financial aid package? And then we'll be able to find out where things are in that. Can you talk about a little bit about the dorms? What is the size of the beds in the dorm rooms?
Okay, so we call them residence halls, not dorms. It took me a very long time to get out of that, because a friend of mine wrote a paper about this. Dorms is a place that you sleep. Residence halls are a place that you create community. So I like to say residence halls because we really are about creating community. So all of the residence hall beds are twin size. Most of them, I believe, if you are looking for sheets, they say to get the fitted extra long sheets because that way they'll go down a little bit further because some of them are a little bit longer, especially if your student is taller. But they all have twin size beds, individual beds in them. Was there something else specific about residence halls?
Not with the residence hall right now. What are the different platforms for meeting potential roommates right now?
So Housing and Residence Life sends out via their housing application. Once your student has applied, they'll get a login and they can go in there and they can look at other people that have also logged in and created their profile, so that they can start to look at other people that are going to be living there and request like their first pick, their second pick. And that's all through the housing system once your student has applied. They're very good about once you have submitted your paperwork to start to send out specific information about how to go about doing that and looking through that information. So my best suggestion to you is once you deposit, get that application in so that they can start to review some of that information.
Absolutely. Once your deposit, your Pacific email should be set up and housing should be sending that into you. So that's the housing application and you can do it that way. We also have a lot of students who will connect via their social media. So we have a Facebook group. I know Facebook isn't really widely used by the younger generation. So we also have Instagram. So those are some of the different platforms and we can drop all that information at the end of the session. Is there a way for them to buy Boxer gear? I know because campus is closed right now, but students want to celebrate being a part of the Boxer family. Is there a way for them to get some of that stuff?
There sure is. So our bookstore is actually a Barnes & Noble. And if you go to the bookstore's website, and Gina, can you pop their web address into the chat? You can purchase items online and have them sent to you. Great opportunity. If you're in the local Forest Grove, Hillsborough community area, there are a couple of local shops that have Boxer gear, such as Fry's Athletics, which is just adjacent to our campus. They are, I believe, open currently for some hours, and that's another location, or you could call them, and I believe they do shipping as well. So those are a couple opportunities of places that you could get Boxer gear right now.
And I just looked, it's free ground shipping on all orders on our Boxer bookstore right now. So now's a good
Love it.
Thank you. And the next question, it kind of comes back to the work study and the documentation. So the federal requirements for an I-9 is that a valid passport meets the requirement. Is Pacific's requirement different than the federal requirement?
Pacific's requirement is not different, but some of our students do not have passports. And so it's a kind of an either or, and it's a great place if you go online and look to see what is required. And if your student has one thing versus the other, then you can send whichever piece of that documentation that they have. So no, it is not different than the federal government.
And then this is more in line with the activities and events for orientation. So what type of events do the students do during orientation, and do students get to stay in the residence halls after the first day?
Okay, so there's, I'm going to address the residence hall piece first. Once we bring your student to campus, they can stay. We're not planning to have students come and go. Actually, so I should just address this right now. With the pandemic, we have a task force. There's about 22 of us currently that sit on the task force about opening our Forest Grove campus for our students to be in person. Although I do know that there's also the option that your student can go online fully in the fall, whichever option that you choose. But there is a group that is working about how do all these logistical pieces work with housing and residence life, with orientation, with the classroom and academics, and all the different parts and pieces. So we meet weekly. We have some sub-task force that are meeting weekly as well to then feed information to the bigger task force. just like all of you, we are very concerned about creating a safe and healthy place for as much as possible as we can, with all the regulations and recommendations that are coming forward, not only from, you know, the bigger national, but also for our local community and our governor. So we are daily looking at all of the different things that are coming in, making decisions. As things happen, when they happen for us, we will let them know as soon as we know specifically how we're going to deal with certain things. Because just like you, we don't like to be caught off guard. You don't like to be caught off guard. But right now, there are just so many moving parts that we can't give some specifics, because we know they're potentially going to change within the next couple of weeks. Washington County we're in Washington County, if you don't know that. So Washington County just applied for phase 1, because our government says we have to apply for our phases to reopen our phase 1 starting June 1st. So we're in just a little bit different flux from parts of the other parts of Oregon, and obviously in different parts depending on what state you're coming from. So please rest assured that we definitely are working very diligently to address all of the different aspects, and we will be communicating to you and your student as those things transition, and how we need to move forward to be able to open and be in person. That's our goal. We want to be in person, welcome your student, and work with you and them with wherever they're at. That may just be that they're online, and that's okay too. We're going to continue to do the outreach. Where I sit within student affairs, it's really important that not only if they're online, that they still become connected to the institution and their peers and all of us as well, because they're part of our Boxer community. So that's super important. Did I answer that all right?
Yes, absolutely.
Not all right, but in its entirety. It's been a long morning already.
I know, right? So the next one is there a school shuttle that'll take the students to and from PDX or Portland International Airport?
So we do not have shuttles from the airport during move-in, during orientation, that is coordinated by the university. There are some subgroups that do have some sort of a system, but they'll communicate directly. Those are typically groups that come in early for specific reasons. But at the end of at the end of fall and at the end of the academic year, we do typically do shuttles that will be communicated out to your student. But getting to Pacific, we know most of them are bringing lots of stuff with them, and so that is on their own to coordinate how they're going to do that. I should also mention that the mail services can receive your packages, especially many students who are traveling from some distance go ahead and ship their items in. And we have an on-site mail service. It's a full capacity mail service, FedEx, UPS, USPS. Oftentimes the question we get answered is, do they need what we call their UC box number, which is their specific number? No, as long as they address it to their name and their address, our mail services is amazing at looking that up and getting that to them. Excuse me, one thing we do ask, because we don't have a lot of storage space, is please don't send those items right now. I know it's exciting to go ahead and get those sent and ready, but if you could wait until closer to your move-in time is super helpful, just for housing of those items. That is something that our mail services do ask. You will be getting communication from your student. Your student will be getting communication from mail services closer to August about how to mail those items in. Gina, I did not finish addressing the two-part question from earlier, so I'd like to go back to that. So the other part of the question was that I talked about housing and move-in is, what do they do during orientation? So we are flexing and manipulating that for this year because of everything that's going on. So right now, all of your students will participate in some online orientation pieces. That will be presentations that they'll need to hear with some specifics about how to be successful when they transition, advising how to utilize the business office, some of those pieces. We're also going to be doing some connecting and community building pieces as well. We're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do that, whether it will be through Moodle, which is a platform that many of your students will be utilizing anyway, or we're also looking at another platform that we think might be just a little bit more user-friendly. And so we're still working on those logistical issues behind the scenes. Once your student arrives, they will obviously move into their residence halls, and we are still planning to do some activities, properly social distance, utilizing the guidelines by the CDC in our state. I don't have real good specifics at the moment because we just had additional information that came out last week that we're adjusting what our plans are. But we know it is important for your student and for you to have that community building and connection and still those traditions. And that is our goal, is to really continue the intent of what orientation has always been and will continue to be.
Absolutely, thank you. And just to kind of follow up with those changes, one of the questions that did come was, so parents got an email last week about how after Thanksgiving, students will be doing classes remotely, just to kind of minimize travel, especially during high travel season. If the student wanted to stay on campus during that time, are they allowed to, or are they required to leave on campus?
I was at a meeting actually first thing this morning, and this was brought up because I know that there's been a lot of questions around that. And my understanding as of today, I'm going to press that as of today, if they are not able to leave for Thanksgiving and want to stay on campus, they are more than welcome to do that. There will be some information coming out from Housing and Residence Life, like registering that you're still planning to stay. So that way they know who is in the halls, and if there becomes an issue that they can be making those connections. So that may be a little different than how it might have been in the past if your student is staying. But that's just so that we can, we're asked by the government and the CDC for contact tracing purposes to know who's coming and going and how that will be.
Thank you. And another question was, do we have a sense of the percentage of incoming students who are deferring or deciding to start remotely? From our end, because the admissions office does handle those, we actually don't have a lot. Everybody is very confident, especially if you're looking at the numbers in Oregon. We are doing really well in terms of the numbers, and so most of our students are opting to come to face-to-face. And obviously, like Denise said, we don't know how exactly that's going to look, but there will be changes to ensure that your student is protected. And being a small school, it makes it so much more easier and seamless to be able to do that, because we don't have a big class. We don't have classrooms of hundreds of students. Our average is 19. And I know I had a student who was in a German class of him and 2 other students. So we're definitely, in a positive mindset, and a lot of families are as well too. And so that's kind of where we're standing. To kind of go back to parking, how do students get their parking permit? I know orientation, there's a lot of things happening that weekend. Is there a time for them to be able to do that?
So typically parking, we actually have a booth that they could do that on the day that they arrive. Some of those logistics we're still working through on exactly where that will happen and how that will happen. They always have the ability to go to the front desk of Student Life, which is in Clark Hall, to do that. If your student is not able to get their parking permit the day they arrive, we know that that's typical, and they have a grace period. They might get a warning on their vehicle saying, hey, don't forget to go get this, but it's a warning. So, and they know our campus public safety is great during those first couple of weeks, and especially this year, knowing that we don't want 50 people to be standing in a line to do that. So we're making arrangements for them to get those parking permits, to get those mailroom keys, all those different components that we would typically do in one way. We're talking about how do we do them in different ways right now, so that way we can still adhere to the different parameters set forward.
So, and I actually don't know this one. How many are in the residence halls? Do you know?
Sure. So overall, in all of our buildings, if we look across all of campus, approximately 1,200 students can live in the residence halls. Each building is a little different. And actually, I can tell you this information because I found it very interesting. So, our president sits on a board for the state called HEC. It's like Higher Education Consortium for Opening During the Pandemic. And they're doing a lot of recommendations, both for public institutions and for private institutions, about how much square footage that you need for people, all of these different parameters. It's very cool. So our staff actually has gone and are currently working in our residence halls to measure every room to verify that it fits within the square footage needed for people, with double occupancy, single occupancy, whatever that may be, to make sure that we're not out of compliance for the recommendations. So it's very cool. Right now, actually at Pacific, our resident hall rooms typically are much larger than state institutions. And as of this morning, of the buildings that were done, we could only identify one room that typically is double occupancy that does not fit the state recommendations for square footage. And so they're going to be adjusting that room, or the occupancy of that room to fit those parameters. So that's just a great example of how we are taking the recommendations and in placing and putting them into what Pacific is doing to be in compliance, but also to be a safe environment for your student.
Perfect, thank you. And a lot of the questions that we are getting pertains to advising and housing. And we did have a lunch with the series, Boxer series, with both housing and advising separately. So we'll make sure to follow up with that video link on there. If you'd like, you can also go to YouTube and follow our channel. It's Boxer Pacific, and you can see all of our series so far. And we will be posting the parent session, this session as well too, in a few days. But it does have a lot of questions about when advising is going to happen, when students can find out about their advising appointment. Mike Shingle is the one who runs that one. And the second one is with Lisa Aiello in housing, and she talks about things that are allowed into the dorm rooms and what's not allowed. So you can find those information online already. So I'm going to move forward with a question a little bit more about kind of coming onto campus and how that looks. How do fall sports practice social distancing while practicing and using the locker room, especially if they have to come a little bit earlier than some of the other students?
So one of the task force that are meeting right now is our athletics task force. They are waiting, they're making plans, but they're also waiting to hear from the governing bodies of the NCAA, and then to make arrangements according to those recommendations as to, some of the different options that may happen is their season may be pushed out a little further, or they may start differently. So those things are being discussed right now, not only as the task force itself at Pacific, but also with the NCAA and those recommendations. So I don't have a distinct answer other than that's what's currently happening.
Absolutely. And then last Thursday, we also had our Dean, Sarah Phillips, jump in on our social science lunch with the series, and she did kind of give us an update on that. So that is the current next of topic. And I think Sarah mentioned maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have an update on athletics at Pacific and how that's going to look like. So if you just can be a little bit more patient, we'll make sure all that information gets out there. And the next question that we got is there a Facebook page for Pacific parents? I know some other schools do have a Facebook page for it. Denise, do you know of any that we have?
We do not currently have a Facebook page for family and parents other than our general Pacific University Facebook page. But at the moment, we do not have that. There are conversations happening right now because we know, just like all of you, communication is changing and it's helpful. You guys want more information. We want to give you more information. And so we're kind of looking at how all of those different components are working right now. What you do have is each month you will get a newsletter on behalf of the university that comes out to family members that has some information and some specifics, especially as they come forward. I also sit on the communications task force, and we're discussing right now, how do we get information out to students, and to family members specific to the pandemic and what is going on with that. Currently, if you go to Pacific's webpage, at the very top, there is a big link that says COVID-19 resources and information. That was primarily driven for the academic year that we just finished. But that's going to be a place that is going to be continued to be updated as well as we continue through the summer and into the next academic year. So there are lots of different specific areas of communication that will be coming towards you, but specifically, do we have a family support page on Facebook? No, we do not currently have that.
I did also add in a link here on our website. We do have a parent support page, and this is something new as well, and we're super excited. So you actually have an email you can reach out to separately, and it'll kind of give you, it talks about academic support system, faculty advising for your student. So everything that Denise has gone over already, you can actually see it online, and I would definitely record or take a look at those links there. And then most of these questions are more about housing and advising. So if it's all right, Denise, if I can just kind of run them by you and then we can answer through them. Does that sound okay? What is allowed in the residence hall? So some of our students are wondering, Keurig machines, microwaves, mini fridges, what are some of the things that are allowed?
So what I can tell you is there's 2 places to get this information. We will be sending out a newsletter that has some of this information. On the housing website, they have also information about things that are allowed or things that are specifically not allowed. Microwaves are not allowed. They have access to kitchens and community spaces that have microwaves so that your student can still use those. It just pulls a lot of amperage that if everybody was using it all at the same time could create a problem.
Yes.
So mini fridges are allowed. There are some specific parameters about how big they are. That's on the housing website. There is also some parameters around like rugs and furniture and that type of stuff. That's on the housing website. So the best place would be is, I believe if you go to the housing website and then go under residence hall, there's a link. I'll have to look at it. And I know, Gina, you can send out some information. And actually, that may be on the recording. I'm not sure. But we also, in orientation, will send that out with the first newsletter because that's one of those biggest questions. I do believe that they can have a Keurig in their room.
I think so too. I heard Keurig is okay. And
Mini fridges.
Yeah, mini fridges are okay.
Candles are not okay. No open flame. If they have a Scentsy warmer, that would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another big no open flames.
Yep.
That's not allowed in the residence halls.
Yep. So nothing that'll catch a spark or burn down the dorm, you're okay. And that includes a toaster oven as well, and microwaves again. So there is a list on our website is what to bring and what not to bring to the dorms, and so you can take a look at that, and we'll make sure to send out a link about that as well. The other question, you talked a little bit about kind of the room size guidelines. What are those guidelines? Like, how are we able to look at
Sure.
that?
My understanding is there has to be 64 square foot per person in the room. How that is exactly configured, I just know that that's the general number as the recommendation. So.
And then the average square footage of the room is a little bit bigger, right? Since that's the one room that wasn't.
Right, and it's not, I can't give you an average because that's what we would have to do because all of the rooms are configured just a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And all the buildings are a little bit differently configured. But yes, there's, if it's a dual occupancy, there would be what, 128. I was a music major, not a math major. So if I have that off just a little, please bear with me. But yes, so they're looking at all of those different square footages right now and making those adjustments.
Perfect. And I think all the kind of other questions that came in, I can make sure to follow up with everybody because they are a little bit more specific to things outside of orientation. I guess one last question that we can do is how can they get a physical copy of the course catalog if we do have?
So we do not have physical copies of the course catalog. they can go online, and this is something that people don't usually realize is available, but it's based off of a PDF file. If you go Control F, you can actually do a find within there and do a quick search that way. Oftentimes that's the easiest way. If you're looking for something specific and you don't want to be scrolling through lots of different pages, the Control F for search is a super helpful tool to utilize in the online academic catalog. Right now, you can also go online to Boxer Online, which is what your student will end up utilizing for a good portion of getting into their business accounts. That's where advising does registration and all of those different components. And they can go to guest and kind of look at some of the offerings, but advising is really going to help them get into those classes specific to what they are needing to do after they fill out the academic interest survey, which will come out once they've deposited. So the biggest thing is get deposited. We want you here. And all those other little components will start to fall into place.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that's most of the kind of questions that popped in. Basically, the follow-up question to that is the PDF of courses printable? Reading online might be a challenge for some of our friends here.
I believe it is printable, at least the last time I went on, because it was like a PDF file, it was printable. It's a very large document, over 100 and some pages.
Yes.
So what I would recommend, if there's something specific that you're looking for, talk to advising. You can email orientation and we can help get you that information specifically. I've put into the chat room the link for not only orientation, but student life, and then also the TriMet, which is our direct connection for traveling. But I'm also going to put my email, and I'll put orientation email in the chat. So if you have specific questions, feel free. I know all of admissions can get those answers for you as well. But I know sometimes it's helpful to reach out to a different area if you think that they can answer that question quicker, or have it right on the tip of their tongue, or whatever that may be.
Absolutely. Thank you. So all of those links that we are adding in this chat room, we'll make sure to add it in the email that gets sent out. I did mention kind of the Lunch with the Boxer series. We do send out a recording of the link to all of our admitted students and parents, usually on Thursday night or Friday night. And you should have that information in your inbox already. Sometimes it goes to spam. It comes from our admissions email address. If you want to search for virtual lunch, you should pop up. But if not, I'm also adding another link to our YouTube channel, and you can actually just subscribe to our channel, because we've had all of those links there. So if you click on that YouTube link, you can see the advising session that we had with Mike Shingle. You can also add it to, or you can also see the housing information. So we'll make sure to follow up with that. And I know there are a number of questions that we couldn't get to today. I've made note of all of that, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure to follow up with you within the next couple of days individually, so you have that information with you. And otherwise, thank you so much, Denise. I know it's been such a pleasure to have you, and I'm kind of sad this is our last one. But, and I know Julio's still here. So did you want to add in any advice that you might have for parents or students while you're here?
Of course.
Quiet, sorry.
No, it's all good, and I can make it quickly. So as a recent graduate, as a first-time college student, as a transfer student, as a college expert in some fashion, my advice that I can give to both students and to parents is, again, just communicate. That was previously iterated by both Gina and Denise, because that's going to be key and crucial. So because there will be times late night around 1 o'clock in the morning where you're going to need to know how to make either some food because you're late night studying. You're like, Mom, how do I make mac and cheese? So don't be afraid to reach out to your friends, family, faculty, staff, because we all want to help you succeed and prosper and to move up a level from mac and cheese. Not gonna lie, that is like the biggest skill that I have learned from my experience with my mentors. But all in all, it's going to be a great time. Come open-minded, be ready for a new experience, and you're going to kill it. You're going to have a great time.
Thank you. Denise, any last words for our parents and students that are here?
Again, with Julio, what Julio said about the communication piece, I know sometimes it's like, I shouldn't answer that question because they're probably getting that sent to them like 50,000 times. We are perfectly happy to answer any and all of your questions. We may not have the answer right now. We may not have the answer, but we can find it and get it for you. It also may feel foreign, just the whole process in general. That's normal. I hate to say that that's normal, but if you have a first-time student going away to college or starting college in general, it's going to feel a little weird right now, and like you should know more than you do, or you're needing more information. We know that that is a hard place to be in, and we honor that. But we also know we are going to roll things out in a specific order so that you don't get overwhelmed, because that can happen as well, and that some things have to fall into place before other things can fall into place. So just remember that if you need to vent, please connect with one of us that are on staff and talk through that. But just know that we are here for you. We are so excited for your student to join us. I am excited as an alum and as a staff member for your student and a family, that's so weird, a family member of a current student, to just welcome you. We're so excited, and can't wait to continue the communication and see you in the fall.
Thank you so much, Denise. And so while we are signing off, I did want to share, there was that one question about finding roommates and what other platforms that we have. And so this is our kind of ending slideshow that we always have, and that is because we do have these different platforms. So a lot of questions came in about advising and how that's going to look and how do they get started on that. Again, there's that Lunch with the Boxer series, but we also have a podcast called Lead the Pack Podcast. It's something new that we started this year, and we're super excited about it. We already have about 10 episodes up, and they're very short episodes. And basically, my colleague Xavier interviews some of the faculty members, and so you can actually get hear from Brian Jackson, Dr. Brian Jackson in the kinesiology department. Mike Shingle also did a session from advising. We also have Mike Garachi from media arts. So a lot of different professors have already kind of done an interview, and so I highly recommend following that podcast. We also have Twitter, Instagram, and that Facebook page for our students. A lot of students are introducing themselves by adding their, senior portrait and saying, hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm from California, I'm interested in this, let me know if you want to be roommates. And so you can use this platform to be roommates as well if you don't want to wait for the housing information. So once again, thank you so much for coming. I know there were a few questions that we didn't get to today. I'm going to make sure to follow up with you before the end of the day today or tomorrow, and so you'll get that information. But thank you so much again, Denise, and hope people to have you. June 1st is that deadline. The sweepstakes are still open for free semester of housing, which is huge. So please reach out to us if you are ready to become a Boxer, and hopefully we'll see you in the fall. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.